You don't become unrecognizable in 90 days by pushing harder. You do it by learning how to keep going when the change stops feeling exciting. That's where most people quit, not because they can't change, but because no one told them what transformation actually feels like. Whether you're rebuilding your health, starting over in your career, changing your relationship with food, or finally finishing a creative project. Process isn't just physical, it's emotional. And if you don't know that going in, you'll think you're failing at the exact moment you're actually changing. You'll hit resistance, self-doubt, or boredom. You'll want to pivot or walk away. And you'll assume that means it's not working. It's working. This is the part that no one talks about, the emotional landscape of a 90-day transformation. And if you don't understand this part, you will sabotage your own growth right before everything starts to shift. That's what's at stake. In this video, I'm going to walk you through what this journey actually feels like on the inside, so that when the hard moments hit, you don't panic. You keep going when most people don't. Let's begin starting with what happens during the first 7 days. This phase is what I call the fantasy versus the reality. The first few days of a transformation feel amazing. You've made the decision. You've cleared the decks. You're all in. There's energy and clarity and momentum. It's like, finally, something clicked. And honestly, that spark is real. You're not imagining it. You have shifted your intention and your body can feel the relief. That contrast between what you just left behind and what you're stepping into can be intoxicating. But here's the part most people don't realize. That feeling isn't momentum yet. It's emotional relief. Your nervous system hasn't been challenged. Your old habits haven't pushed back. You haven't hit resistance. So even though it feels like everything is different, this isn't the turning point. It's just the opening credits. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. Because it finally feels possible. They try to change everything at once. They sprint out of the gate, load up their schedule, raise all their standards overnight. And when that momentum doesn't last, they blame themselves. So here's what I want you to remember in week 1. Let it be simple. Choose one thing to repeat. Focus less on proving, more on stabilizing. Don't chase the feeling of being on fire. Chase the feeling of showing up. Because what happens next in weeks 2 and 3, that's when things start to get real. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Weeks 2 and 3 are where the fantasy starts to crack. I call this the first friction point. The energy from week 1 fades, the novelty wears off, and suddenly the routines that you were excited about feel inconvenient, heavy, forgettable. You don't mean to stop showing up. You just hesitate. You snooze once. You skip a day. You think, what's one workout? What's one decision? And here's the dangerous part. This is when your brain offers a different story. I knew I wasn't disciplined enough. I always burn out. This wasn't the right time. Something's off. I should pause and regroup. It will sound rational. It will sound mature. But what it really is resistance. This is your old self testing the new one. And most people don't recognize it as a test. They think it's a signal to stop. So they scale back or pivot to something shinier or slide into all or nothing thinking. If I can't do this perfectly, what's the point? But this is where the work actually begins. Because until now, your transformation hasn't cost you anything. It hasn't required discomfort. It hasn't pulled anything up from underneath. But now you're starting to change your story and your nervous system doesn't like it. So if you're in this phase right now and you're feeling off track, unmotivated, like the spark is gone, good. That means you're not coasting anymore. You're in the part where something new gets built. Don't retreat. Hold the line. Recommit gently, even if it doesn't feel exciting. The truth of what's happening in weeks 2 and 3 is you're not backsliding. You're just meeting the part of you that's scared. However, the next phase is when the real tension sets in. And if you're not prepared for that, it can undo everything. So let's talk about that next. Weeks 4 to 6 are what I call the messy middle. Now, this is where most people quit. Not because it's not working, but because it is. Stay with me. By now, you've been at it for a few weeks. You've shown up. You have weathered the first dip. You've stayed with it longer than most people do. But here's what happens next. And I say this with love. You're going to want to blow it all up. You'll get an idea for a better plan, a more exciting goal, a different method that feels fresher, faster, more efficient. You'll start saying things like, I think I need a new system, or I'm just going to take a week to regroup, or I'm not feeling aligned anymore. This phase is subtle. It doesn't always look like quitting. It often looks like upgrading. But what actually is happening is this. You've reached the point in the process where the old version of you is losing its grip. And the new version isn't fully rooted yet. You're between identities, which means that you're also between comforts. There's grief in this phase. There's restlessness. There's vulnerability. You'll have good days and then spiral the next day for no clear reason. And if you don't recognize this as a normal part of the arc, you'll interpret it as something being wrong. You'll convince yourself that you need a reset when what you actually need is reassurance. This is what transformation feels like in the messy middle. It's not glamorous. It's not inspiring. It's uncomfortable and dull and quiet and full of second guessing. But this stretch, this 3-week stretch, this is where 90% of people tap out. Not because they failed, but because they didn't know that this is what progress feels like. If you can stay the course here, if you can keep showing up imperfectly through the chaos, then everything starts to shift, and not in a big dramatic way. In the next phase, something quieter begins to settle in, and that's where we're heading next. This phase, and we're in weeks 7 to 9 now, this phase rarely gets talked about because it doesn't make for great before and after stories. I call this phase the quiet becoming. There's no big turning point, no burst of motivation, no gold star moment where you feel like a brand new person. But something is quietly taking root. You start doing the thing without overthinking it. And you bounce back faster when you miss a day. And you don't need as much pep talk or planning. And maybe for the first time, it doesn't feel like you're trying to change, you're just living differently. This is the phase where new identity begins to feel normal. Not thrilling, not finished, but steady. Now, the danger here is subtle because there's no dramatic emotional feedback. You might not even realize how far you've come. You'll downplay it. You'll say, yeah, I mean, it's going okay, I guess. Or I'm still not really where I want to be. That's your old self trying to measure transformation by extremes and external milestones. But real change isn't loud, it's cumulative. If you zoomed out right now and looked at how you respond to stress and how you manage your time and how you treat your body and how you speak to yourself, you'd see it. You are becoming unrecognizable, not all at once, but in layers. This is integration. It's the part of the journey where your nervous system starts to relax into the new rhythm that you've created. It doesn't mean that the work is done, but it means that the work is landing. And in the next phase, you'll feel it click. Not because you achieve something, but because you notice who you've become. So let's talk about that. Week 10 to 12 are what I call the click. By this point, you have stopped checking your progress every 5 minutes. You're not obsessing over whether it's working. You're just living differently. Something has clicked. Not in a big cinematic moment, but in the way that you move through your day, the way that you respond to setbacks, the way that you hold yourself in quiet moments when no one is watching. You start saying things like, that's not like me anymore. Or, actually, I don't do it that way now. You don't need to convince anyone that you have changed. You just have. And here's the thing. It doesn't mean you've arrived. There's no final form. There are still hard days. There are still parts that you're working on, but there's a difference now. You trust yourself. You're not operating from borrowed discipline or fresh start energy. You're anchored. You built something real. This is what becoming unrecognizable actually looks like. Not a glow up, not a dramatic before and after, but self-respect and self-trust and clarity. And from there, anything is possible. Not because of what you've achieved, but because of who you now believe you are. This is what happens when you stay with yourself through the discomfort, through the dip, through the messy middle. And if you're in that process now, if you have committed to your own 90-day transformation, or you're about to, just know you don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to stay in it long enough for the change to catch up to you. Now, if you're in this process now and you're doubting yourself because it doesn't feel like a transformation, this is your reminder. You're not behind. You're just halfway through the arc. Real change doesn't feel like progress. It feels like tension. It feels like discomfort. It feels like nothing is happening right before everything shifts. So wherever you are in the timeline, whether you're just starting or you're deep in the messy middle, keep going. Because 90 days from now, you could be someone you barely recognize in the best possible way. Not because of what's changed on the outside, but because of how solid you feel on the inside. If you want a little help getting started or getting back on track, I have created a free 5-day reset to kick off your next chapter. It is linked below in the description. And if this video spoke to you, drop me a comment and tell me where you are in the timeline. The first friction point, the messy middle, I'd love to hear. And I'll see you in the next one. I will see you in the next one. I don't like what I did with my hand there. Do that again. And I'll see you in the next one. Was that God, there's something weird about that. Okay, I'm going to do that again. And I'll see you in the next one. Okay, that's good. I'm happy with that.